Tonight, it's France against Morocco, Kylian Mbappe against Achraf Hakimi. Two of the most dangerous football nations on the planet meeting again in a World Cup knockout round, 4 years after France beat Morocco in the 2022 semifinal. For one of these two teams, the World Cup ends tonight. But we're not looking at the football field. We're looking at what runs underneath both countries, the French and Moroccan national railways. Because here's what almost nobody watching tonight's match knows. 2,000 kilometers apart, on two different continents, there is a train in Morocco that shares its bloodline with a train in France. The Moroccan one is called Boraq. It runs at 320 kilometers per hour between Tangier and Casablanca. Its ancestor is the TGV duplex, the same French engineering, the same manufacturer built for the same job. This is not a coincidence. It's the result of a 100-year relationship between two railways, one that began under a French protectorate and is being tested again right now on the same global stage as tonight's match. France hosted this tournament in 1998. Morocco will co-host it in 2030. Between those two dates is a story about two very different countries, building two very different railways, one of them using the other's exact blueprint to do it. This is a comparison of the trains, the tracks, and the systems behind them. Morocco's rail network did not begin as a Moroccan project. Construction started in 1915 under the French protectorate, with narrow-gauge lines built primarily to move phosphate and agricultural goods to coastal ports for export to Europe. The first loaded phosphate train departed the Koribga mines on the 30th of June, 1921. Passenger service was secondary. This was colonial infrastructure, built to extract, not to connect. Morocco's national railway operator, the Office National des Chemins de Fer, was not established until 1963, 7 years after independence, by royal decree. It inherited a French-built network and slowly converted it into a national one. France's own railway, by contrast, is more than a century older, formed in 1838 and consolidated into the state-owned SNCF in 1938, a full century before Morocco's national operator even existed. Two railways, one a colonial legacy turned national project, one the original blueprint. The relationship between them never really ended. It just changed shape. Consider the scale. The French network covers approximately 35,000 kilometers of route. Of that, roughly 14,500 kilometers are electrified, and 2,600 kilometers are dedicated high-speed line. More than 14,000 trains run daily. Morocco's network covers approximately 2,300 kilometers, with roughly 75% electrified. Of that total, 323 kilometers is the Boraq high-speed corridor, the only high-speed rail line on the African continent. By raw size, France's network is more than 15 times larger. But that comparison alone misses the more interesting story. Morocco's high-speed line, as a percentage of its total network, is proportionally significant for a system barely 7 years into high-speed operation, while France spent 45 years, from the first line's approval in 1974 to today, building out its 2,600 kilometers. Morocco is compressing a decades-long build-out into a single generation. The World Cup is the reason why. Now the trains themselves. Boraq launched in November of 2018, built by Alstom using Euro duplex train sets, technology drawn directly from the TGV duplex. 12 train sets are in service, each carrying 533 passengers in a 2-power car, 8-coach configuration. Top operational speed is 320 kilometers per hour, achieved on the 186-kilometer dedicated section between Tangier and Kenitra. The full run from Tangier to Casablanca, 323 kilometers, takes 2 hours and 10 minutes, down from nearly 5 hours on the old conventional line. France's answer is the TGV M, SNCF's fifth-generation high-speed train, badged by Alstom as the Avelia Horizon. It was ordered in 2018 at a cost of €3.5 billion for 100 domestic train sets, with entry into commercial service beginning in 2026 on the Paris-Lyon-Marseille corridor. Each 11-vehicle set carries up to 740 passengers, 20% more than the outgoing TGV duplex, while consuming 20% less energy. Top operational speed is 320 kilometers per hour under standard signaling. Put plainly, Boraq is running a proven, decade-old Alstom platform at its full rated speed. The TGV M is Alstom's newest platform, entering service in the same year this video is being made. One country is running the established technology at scale. The other is deploying the bleeding edge of the same manufacturer's product line. Same company, same speed class, two very different points in the technology's life cycle. Passenger rail gets the coverage. Freight is where a railway's real economic weight shows up. SNCF's freight division moves goods across a network built primarily for speed and passenger volume, competing directly with road haulage, and has faced a structural decline in rail's freight market share as trucking absorbed traffic that once ran on rail. Morocco's freight story is built around a single commodity: phosphate. Morocco holds an estimated 68% of the world's known phosphate rock reserves, and rail handles a significant share of the more than 70% of the national operator's freight tonnage that phosphate represents, moving ore from the Kharibga mines toward processing and export. Total freight volume runs to roughly 24.5 million tons a year, though the state phosphate company has diversified into pipeline transport for part of that flow, a 235-kilometer slurry pipeline that now competes directly with the railway for the same cargo. Morocco's railway wasn't built for passengers first. It was built to move rock out of the ground and onto ships. Everything since sits on top of that original mining logic. France's rail network needed no World Cup to justify itself in 1998. The TGV network was already 2 decades old by then. Morocco's situation is the opposite. The kingdom is racing a deadline. A $10 billion, 430-kilometer high-speed extension linking Kenitra, Rabat, Casablanca, and Marrakesh is currently under construction, targeting completion by 2029. 1 year ahead of Morocco's co-hosted 2030 World Cup. In February of 2025, Morocco's rail operator awarded contracts worth $2.9 billion for 168 new train units, explicitly framed around World Cup readiness. Boraq's average load factor sat at 66% in 2025, meaning the current fleet still has room to absorb passenger growth before the extension even opens. That headroom is deliberate. Morocco is not just building for the tournament, it is building for what the tournament leaves behind. 2 railways. One inherited the other's blueprint a century ago and is now running some of that same manufacturer's newest hardware at full speed. The other spent 45 years building the network the newcomer is trying to replicate in a decade. Tonight, on the pitch, this comes down to 90 minutes. The railways underneath both countries have been building toward this kind of moment for over 100 years, and in Morocco's case, most of it in the last 8.